This all starts with the heart. So let me take you back, February 2008, New Orleans. Mikhail Gorbachev is in town to give a speech about abolishing nuclear weapons. This is years after he was the head of the Soviet Union. I'm in a hotel lobby waiting to see him. I've got an hour and a half to ask the questions that will fill Esquire's What I've Learned column. I'm well prepared, ready to go. Phone rings. It's the publicist. Cal, sorry to tell you, but your interview with Mr. Gorbachev is going to have to be cut short. Uh-oh. Here's why I'm concerned. I know that this column cannot be fluffed up and filled out. This column is written in the words of the subject. And those words can't be just any words. They got to be wise words. So I need at least an hour to get into his soul, extract the wisdom, and fill up this column. How much time do I got? 10 minutes? 10 minutes? I can't make this work in 10 minutes. That's impossible. Cal, look, a lot of very important people have been added to the list to see Mr. Gorbachev. There's nothing I can do. You want the time or not? Well, of course I take the time. But as I hang up the phone, this feels worse and worse because I know I'm going to walk in there, I'm going to say hello, exchange pleasantries, be seated. That's 2 minutes. Plus, my questions had to be translated into Russian, his answers back to English. By the time this thing gets rolling, I may be down to 6 minutes. But hey, you can only do your best. Time arrives, publicist escorts me into the conference room, and there he is, Gorby. Looks a little older than I remember. He's about 77 at the time. And I'm guessing that he's expecting my first question to be about abolishing nuclear weapons, Ronald Reagan, world events. So I look him in the eye and I ask, what's the best lesson your father ever taught you? He's surprised in a pleasant way. He looks up, he's searching, doesn't say anything. And then it's as if he could see a movie of his past on the ceiling. And he starts to tell me a story about a day when he was a boy and his dad was summoned to fight in World War II. Now, the Gorbachevs lived on a farm, and he describes his trip from the farm to this town with his family to see his dad off. He's giving me all these details, and I'm transfixed, but I'm also thinking, wrong question. By the time this family gets to town, this interview is going to be over. But they do get to town. And when they get to town, Mr. Gorbachev takes the entire family into a little shop, and he buys everybody in the family some ice cream. And Gorbachev is remembering this ice cream. He's remembering the aluminum cup that it came in. And he's talking about this ice cream as if it's in the palm of his hand. And as he's talking about this ice cream, it's as if we both have this realization. This ice cream is the reason that he was able to make peace with Ronald Reagan and end the Cold War. Because this ice cream contained the memory of what it was like just before his father went off to war. The dread of not knowing whether his father would ever come back. I'm looking at the ice cream, he's looking at the ice cream, we're looking at each other back at the ice cream, and we're thinking, this is deep. Just then, knock on the door. It's the publicist. Mr. Gorbachev, time's up. And now the publicist is looking at me because the door's open. We can see a long line of people as if to say, hey, I did the best I could for you, but look. Gorbachev looks at her and says, no, I want to talk to him. She puts her hands up, sheepishly backs out the room, door closes, interview continues. We go deeper. The column gets filled, and it's a huge success. When I thought back on it, I realized if I hadn't aimed my first question at his heart, I never would have gotten that insight. If I'd asked a canned question at the start, I probably would have gotten a canned answer. The interview would have been over in a few minutes, and I never would have known what was possible. So, I'm here today to show you how changing questions can change your life. Changing questions can certainly help every one of you make deeper connections at this summit with everyone you meet. Changing questions can help you master the art of conversation. In order to do that, it's wise to arrange your questions in a certain way. Start with the heart, then go to the head. Once you've got the heart and the head, you're on a pathway to the soul. And by the way, this goes way beyond business. Great questions impact every aspect of life. It can help you find a spouse. It can help you find a better spouse. Seriously, they can help you guide your children with more insight. Bottom line is, great questions asked in just the right way will make you better at anything you do. So I've already told you about the benefits from starting with a question to the heart. Now let's go to the head. The word why is a great way to start a question to the head. That's because the word why, it gently nudges people to think more deeply about something they already know. For example, why is your best friend your best friend? The best questions make the person asked just as curious about the answers as you are. Maybe they want to know the answer even more than you do. They'll search for that answer. Listen carefully as they do. Look them in the eye as if they're the only person on earth. If you've got to ask a predictable question, ask it in an unpredictable way. And most importantly, invite. Make sure you invite a response and never push one away. The answers you get and the way you pay attention to them will clear the pathway to the soul. Now, there's no way I can describe to you what it's like to enter someone's soul, but I hope this story will give you a taste of the experience. This is summer 2003. I'm sent by Esquire Magazine to interview and write a cover story about my childhood hero, Muhammad Ali. By this time, the world knows Muhammad has Parkinson's disease. This is 20 years after he's had his last fight, and we'd all seen him at the Olympics in Atlanta with his hands shaking and the Olympic torch in it, and he's trembling as he's trying to light the Olympic cauldron, but he can't get that torch in just the right place. And the world holds its breath. I mean, the tension. And finally, the Olympic flame ignites, it erupts, and everybody's heart erupts with it. Years had passed since that moment. The editors of Esquire want to know, how's he doing now? And they sent me to find out. I go to meet him. I'm in the living room, and he comes through these double doors on slow, tender steps. He knows that he's my childhood hero. And he opens his arms, and he gives me a big embrace. And then he goes over to this soft, cushy chair, and he sits down. I take a seat at the sofa next to him, and I said, Muhammad, I came here to find out all the wisdom you've accumulated in your life. As I'm talking, the trembling in his right hand is back up to his elbow, and now both of his hands are trembling. I'm thinking, should I call his wife? And now he's leaned over, his whole body is trembling, and his breaths are coming in gasps. I'm like, Champ, are you okay? And his head slowly comes up, and it looks me in the eye, and he says, scared you, huh? And man, it only got more confusing throughout the week. One day I'm with him, and he needs a wheelchair to get from one place to the other. The next day, we're out, and it looks like a large crowd is going to converge on us. He's got no wheelchair, and he needs to move quick to get into the car, and he does. The next day, he can't talk very loud, but I see him doing magic tricks for people. And the day after that, he takes his medicine, it turns his tongue orange, and we're sitting on a sofa talking, and he just falls asleep, and his leg is jangling into mine. And I'm thinking, how can I possibly explain this in a magazine article? There's not a chance. And there's not a single question that can come off my lips that will unlock this mystery. We're down to the last day. Muhammad's wife says, you know, Muhammad, you never exercise anymore. Why don't you take Cal over to the gym and exercise a little? Muhammad just rolls his eyes like, oh, geez, the wife. All right, Cal, come on. And he walks me over to the gym, only it's not a gym. It looks more like a museum. There's a boxing ring in the center. Looks like nobody's ever stepped foot in it. Exercise equipment all around. Looks like it just came out of boxes. There's no smell of sweat. There are mirrors around the entire gym, and above them are photos of Ali's great fights with his biggest rival, Joe Frazier. Now, the 3 fights that they had were the thrill of my childhood. I knew everything about these guys. I even knew the childhood stories that define their styles. For instance, when Muhammad was a kid, he used to have his little brother Rudy take rocks and throw them at his head. And the rock would come right up to his head, and just last minute, Ali would lean back and let the rock whiz right by. And that's just how he fought in the ring. He would dance and dance around like no heavyweight ever before him. You couldn't touch him. And when you tried and you threw a punch, he'd just lean back, make you miss, and then throw 8 shots and land before you could even blink. It was as fast as a shoe shine guy buffing a pair of shoes. And Joe Frazier, he grew up in Beaufort, South Carolina on a farm, using a cross saw with his dad. His dad had no left arm, and so his dad used his right hand, Joe would use his left, sawing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Out of those muscles came this brutal left hook that came from out of the side, out of nowhere. And it was the one punch that a kid who could avoid rocks in the street was vulnerable to. Watching these guys fight was like watching lightning versus thunder. Now, when these guys fought, Ali was no longer very young. He was older. He couldn't dance around the ring all the time. And he got into trouble because he was being pushed to his limits by Joe Frazier. And when he got into deep trouble, he had a corner man who would exhort him on. This guy's name was Drew Bundini Brown. And Drew would yell, "The world needs you, champ. Go to the well once more. Go to the well once more." And somehow, Ali would dig deep inside of himself and find whatever it was that rise to the occasion. I'm looking at these pictures, and I can almost hear Bundini, "Go to the well once more." And I knew I had to find out what was still in the well. So I look around, and there is a rack of boxing gloves. And I'm thinking, should I try it? I go over, I take 4 gloves off this rack. I put 2 on Muhammad's hands, 2 on my own. Now, there's something you got to understand here. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but I trained to fight Julio Cesar Chavez when he was junior welterweight champ of the world. He was 87-0. It's a long story. What's important in it is I train in the exact style of Joe Frazier. So I got these gloves on, and now I'm starting to bob and weave. Only I don't come at Muhammad. I go at the heavy bag. And here's the thing. I could do Joe Frazier so good, I could even sound like Joe Frazier. So I'm bobbing and weaving, and I'm saying, and I'm looking at Ali out of the corner of my eyes. And his eyebrows arch like a sleeping lion awakened by an old familiar scent. "You good." He comes up to the bag. You think that's going to keep me off? I'm saying, now I'm really getting into it. And Ali looks at me. Oh, that's what you want to know. And then I saw something that I never thought I'd see again. Muhammad Ali started to dance. And he starts to circle the bag. And as he's circling, he's looking at himself in the mirror. And he can see himself. And as he's seeing himself, his chest is coming up. And his head is coming up. And he's dancing. It's not like he's 22, but he has style and he's grace and he's dancing. All of a sudden, he stops, pivots, and doom. If the bag had been a person, would have gone down. Only, as he's moving away, his legs cross, and he starts to trip. And I'm thinking, oh no. And he goes down on some mats, and I start to run over toward him. Before I get to him, he turns over, and he starts to do stomach crunches. Then he's doing sit-ups. Then he's on his back bicycling his legs. Gets up, goes to the super leg press. It's on 250 pounds. He's pushing it back and forth. I said, champ, that's a lot of weight. You don't have to. Feels good. I thought that I'd gotten what I needed to know, but he had more to give. Afterward, we go back to his house. He sits me down at a table, leaves, comes back with a piece of paper. It's filled with wisdom. And he points to a line in the center. It says, God will not place a burden on a man's shoulders, knowing he cannot handle it. Then he goes off again. He goes into the kitchen. And he comes back with two bowls in one hand and a quart of ice cream in the other. And Muhammad Ali and I sit at the table, and we both eat ice cream. Thank you.